Hi, in this video I'm going to be showing you how to use Cockatrice in order to play Magic the Gathering for free on this client. There are a lot of things that can take getting used to, especially if you aren't used to playing on third-party platforms, but at the end of this video hopefully you'll have a good idea of what to do. So first, if you just look up Cockatrice, you'll be able to find this GitHub website where you can find the download. And I'm on a Mac, so I've downloaded the Mac version, but it's pretty easy to install. And once you're done, then I'll show you what to do next. So once you have Cockatrice downloaded, you'll see that it's within your applications, but you'll also see that you've also downloaded another application called Oracle. And when you open Oracle, which is what you should do first, before opening Cockatrice, you'll see that you're prompted to download all of the different cards that exist within the Oracle database. And what this does is it allows you to have all of the image files, card descriptions, and anything related to Magic the Gathering that you'd need uploaded into Cockatrice for when you finally use it. And so this is something that you're going to want to run every time a new set comes out. And it will import the entire library every time, and it will overwrite the last one. So you don't have to worry about taking up a bunch of space on your computer every time you run this. As far as space is concerned, it's actually not that big. And so after it does the cards, it'll take care of the tokens, and then once you've finished, Oracle will close itself and you can open up Cockatrice. So once you open up Cockatrice, what you're looking at is a list of all the cards in the database on the left, and you can search for them by name. They're automatically organized by alphabetical order. And then if you double click on a card, it will automatically put it into this deck builder on the right side. In the middle, you'll see the image of the card. You can click on the description to find a word description of everything on the card in case you don't have the image or the image is really small or very outdated. The description is a pretty useful tool. Or you can have both. But usually I like to keep it on just image. So when you double click on the left, it'll end up in this deck builder here on the right. And if you double click on a card on the right side, it won't delete it, it will put it in the sideboard. You have to click the minus button in order to delete it from the deck. So if you want to build a deck completely from this database, you can. However, sometimes that might be a little slow, and maybe you have a deck you really like that you have just a deck list of. And so to show you an example, I'm going to look up a deck, a commander deck that I've been meaning to get. So I'm going to go ahead and look up this commander deck, and I like to go to tapped out because I can look at the deck list, and I can, if I download and put it to a text file, what'll happen is it'll download the deck list in a really great format that if I just copy and paste it, or if I just copy it, then I can go to Cockatrice Deck Editor and load deck from clipboard. And it'll pop in here really nice. I just hit OK, and all of a sudden I have a full deck. And so all I need to do to save it is give it a name, and then hit Control S or go to Deck Editor and save. I can just save it, and it automatically saves to this decks folder. So great, now you have a deck that you want to play. Whether it's a commander or a draft or just standard, modern, whatever you want. But how do you actually play on Cockatrice? So the first thing you need to do is connect to the Cockatrice server. So you can connect with this or Control L or Command L. I'm going to be saying Control because most of my friends play on Windows, so that's how I hear it. So Control L will connect to the database, and you're going to want to connect to Rooster Ranges. And then you'll have to create your own login. It doesn't really matter what you use as your login. It will save it automatically, and as long as you don't delete Cockatrice or start on a new computer, you probably won't have to remember what your login is ever. So I'm going to go ahead and connect. And now these tabs appear at the top. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the Magic tab. And I'll see that there are a bunch of games that exist. And I can, if I'm looking for a game with people I don't know, I can filter games by anything. And I'll be able to find exactly what I'm looking for. Sometimes if you want to spectate in a match, then what you can do is you can hit clear filter. And sometimes that'll show some more games. Sometimes you can filter games by show unavailable in case the game you want to spectate is already full. But in this case, what I'm going to do is just create a new game. And you can name it whatever you want. So I'll name it test. And because it's just me, I'll be playing with one player. I've only played with up to 4 players. The UI can get pretty small if you go above 4. Though I haven't actually personally seen it. And then you can create different game types and specify what you want with spectators. I'm going to create a password just so that no one ends up spectating it by accident. So I'll just create magic as the password. And then now I'm just going to be looking at a blank screen until I load a deck. So I'll load this commander deck. Actually, you know what? I'm going to load a different deck. I'll load one with a sideboard. So you'll see that I have this sideboard down here. This is a draft I did a long time ago. And so I can view all the cards in my deck. And if I wanted to pull something from my sideboard, all I have to do is click sideboard locked. And now it's unlocked, and I'm able to double-click cards to stick them into my main deck. And then I can double-click cards on my main deck to put in the bottom, into the sideboard. If you click sideboard unlocked, then it'll return everything to where it originally was. So if you want to keep these sideboard cards in your main deck, then don't lock it again, because then you'll have to start all over. So once you're ready with your deck, you can hit ready to start. And once all the players in the game click ready to start, then you'll be able to see this screen. So there's a lot of etiquette with playing online with people you don't know, and that you use in the chat box. Now, because I only play with people I do know, and we have like a Discord call going at the same time, I generally don't really know the etiquette. If you find other videos about Cockatrice, you can learn more about that. But as is standard with my play group, we usually start with a die roll to see who goes first. So that's a Control I, and the automatic number of sides is 20. So if I hit OK, it'll roll a dice in here. So I got a 16, which that's pretty good. Now that I've rolled a dice, then I can shuffle my deck, which is Control S. If I'm doing anything with the deck, I can right-click it, and it'll open up this palette that is pretty extensive. And you can hover over things to see what they do, but everything that I'm going to show you with quick commands, with shortcuts, you can probably do by right-clicking things around the board. So I can shuffle with a right-click instead of Control S, but it's really easy just to hit some quick keystrokes. So then I want to draw my initial hand. So I can do that a few different ways. I can click Control E and draw 7 cards. Or I can use Control D to draw cards one at a time. I can click Control M to mulligan. And unfortunately, the mulligan doesn't work. It might work for you, but I think on my version it doesn't work. So all it will do is shuffle my hand into my deck. So I'll give it a couple more shuffles, draw 7 more. And then, because this is just a tutorial, I won't take an actual mulligan. Okay, so let's see here. We've drawn our first hand. We're pretending that there's someone on the other side of the screen. Now let's learn how to actually play. So there are a couple ways to bring cards from your hand onto the board. You can click and drag, which is what I do, but if you double click, it'll also work. If you double click a spell, it'll put it into the stack here. We call it the stack if we're using the double click, but if we're doing commander, a way to keep the commander on board, and I'm looking at my library to find a commander, then we simply leave it in the stack, but we call it the command zone for whatever purpose you're using it for. And it'll stay here for forever until you drag it onto the field. And once you have a creature dragged onto the field, you'll be able to see their stats in the bottom right corner. And you'll be able to tap cards by double clicking them. And that's all I'm doing. And if I want to change the stats of this card for some reason, I can right click the card. And again, you'll see there's a pretty extensive palette. So I can go to power and toughness, and I can do any sort of combination of things to change the stats. I can even do it manually. And once I change stats, they'll turn orange to signify that it's not the actual stat, original one. And you can always check the image on the right side, or again, the description, or both. But that's how that works. All right, so let's say you really like this left bar that keeps track of the phases. So I'll run through that really quick. Let's say I have a field full of tapped creatures, or tapped cards. And to tap multiple things at once, all you have to do is click and drag a box to select and highlight multiple. And then when you tap one, they'll all tap at the same time. In my up tap step, I can just click the untap button and everything will automatically untap. But let's say you have a card that it doesn't untap in your untap step. There's a solution for that. If you right click, you can toggle normal untapping. It'll give it a purple outline, and then when you click the untap button, it won't untap. And you can still do it manually, but it works how you want it to. Then in the draw, and you can just click through these, most of them don't do anything. It's just for other players to know where you are in your turn. But if you click the draw step button, then you'll be able to draw without any other shortcuts. Then the rest of these are, again, just for your opponent. Then when you're done with your turn, you go to the end step, and the general etiquette is when you're done with your turn, you click end, and then the next player is the one who clicks pass. And all it does is it gives priority to the next player, and usually it'll highlight their area of the board. But because I'm on my own in this game, you won't be able to see that. All right, let's talk about combat a little bit. So let's say I have, I'm going to pretend that this is my opponent and this is me. And my opponent is going to attack me for 7. Now, they can signify it by just simply tapping their creature and telling me they're attacking me. Or if they're doing something specific, or if I'm casting a spell that's targeting a specific creature or permanent, I can draw an arrow by right-clicking and dragging. So the default arrow is red, and I can target the player, I can target a creature, I can target any card on the battlefield. And to clear arrows, you just have to change phases. You can change the color of the arrow too. If you use Shift, it turns green. If you use Alt or Option, it'll turn blue. And if you use Command or Control, it'll turn yellow. And you can do multiple arrows at the same time. And then, of course, just erasing them all at the same time. There's no way to erase only one of them. So once you have your attack, and I say, well, maybe I'll be willing to take 7 damage, then I can change my life total by simply going over to this life total. Left clicking will increase life, right clicking will decrease. If it's a lot of damage at the same time, you can use Control L to change your life total. And then let's say I wanted to block. Then I can just signify that I'm blocking and then move it to the graveyard. The graveyard is on top and exile is on bottom. And again, with graveyard, you can move it directly to a place. If you need randomized things, you can reveal a random card. And then exile, you can either move things from exile or just view it. If you double click the exile, then you can see a little box that holds that. Let's take another look at things that are on this UI. So we talked about life total, the phases, and these different zones here, but let's talk about this. So most of these, the top 5 are just different color counters. You can see that in the chat box, everything I've been doing is logged. If I do things that are only private to me, such as looking at the top card of my library, I'll be able to see the name of the card and hover over it to change to see what that card is. But other players will only see that I looked at the top card of my library. But anyway, back to these colors. Again, I can left click to add, right click to subtract. And most of the time we use these to keep track of like mana if we're dealing with a ton of mana. White is, or this white one is either colorless or just any kind of counter that you want to keep track of. Sometimes we use it as commander tax. And then orange is generally storm. But hopefully you're not playing against the storm deck. And hopefully you're not playing storm deck. You're better than that. Okay. So let's see here. What else do we have on Cockatrice? We can add counters to cards. So we can add colors. They can be red, they can be yellow, or they can be green. Generally, these are used for a number of +1/+1 counters or something like that. Loyalty counters on planeswalkers. And those are really easy to set, add, or remove. And then let's see here. Oh, for certain creatures that have abilities, for example, Master of the Wild Hunt creates a 2/2 wolf creature token at the beginning of each upkeep. So let's say I don't know how to create a token. Well, if I right click on Master of the Wild Hunt, you'll see that in part of the palette here, it's an option to create a token, and it will automatically create it for you, and it's very handy. Other things that are like Lord effects that give certain creatures +1/+1, that's something you have to handle on your own. But in terms of creating tokens, you should be able to right click on the card and it will do it for you. The same thing works for planeswalkers. And then I can just manually tap to deal or to use its ability. And then when tokens are destroyed, they just disappear from the game. But let's say I want to create a token that doesn't have a prompt. Maybe I want to show my friend a card in the game and don't feel like sending him a picture. I can go to Create Token. And these default ones are pretty common tokens, but let's say I want to show a specific card, like Charging Badger. How about that? So if I type in Charging Badger, and I have to type the name exactly correctly, then it'll create an exact replica of Charging Badger. But because it's a token, as soon as it gets off the field, it disappears. However, if I create the token and uncheck Destroy Token when it leaves the table, then it can interact with the graveyard and exile. But it also means that it's just an extra card that you brought on the table for no reason, and you want to get rid of it. So what we like to do is if you right-click in the general battlefield, and again, there are even more things you can do from here. Let's see here, I can open up the sideboard. And here you can see my sideboard. And I can just go ahead and stick this in there. Or take something out in case you have a sideboard ability. And then there it's gone. So So we talked about most of the things that are commonly used within Cockatrice. You can always do some more exploring with these different palettes, with moving top cards. You can reveal cards to all players. You can always reveal top card where it will just be face up the entire time. And they're all very useful things within Magic the Gathering. So as long as you don't mind just tapping everything and not worrying about abilities being exactly automatic, Cockatrice works really great as a free client for playing Magic the Gathering. And if you want to play online with people you don't know, just make sure you try to watch some more videos on Cockatrice to make sure you find the etiquette so that you don't get kicked from random people's games. I generally play with friends over Discord, and this is a really great place to do it. But yeah, if you play with more than 3 other people, the board in this section stays the same size for the entire field. And so this whole section will get divided into 4. And once you get beyond that, the cards get really small. And if I keep dragging cards out, you'll see that the board will just get longer and longer. And before long, you can't tell what things say, because sometimes the text will get cut off, and it's no fun. But once you get used to playing, and you find all the different shortcuts, and you find everything you're looking for, Cockatrice is really great. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave a comment in the comment section, and I'll try to get back to you. Otherwise, have fun. Good luck.